Welcome back. We're here with Congresswoman Nancy Mace. We've been talking about her first 200 days in office. It probably feels a little bit more like 2,000, I'd imagine. You have accomplished a lot in your first 200 days. A lot has happened. Got to get to this infrastructure bill, $1 trillion infrastructure bill that very difficult trying to get both sides to agree.
Yes, it is. And I thought, sitting on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, this would be the one committee where we could be bipartisan. And the bipartisanship work has been done in the Senate rather than the House. House leaders were not able to be part of the conversation when that deal was being negotiated. That bill was just written. I do have a lot of questions about how the infrastructure package will be paid for, whether or not we're going to have a tax hike like we've heard rumors about. It's thousands of pages of legislation that just was written this weekend, so we haven't even been able to even get anywhere close to finishing reading it to see what's actually in it yet.
2022 election, not far off. Your fundraising has been very successful thus far. I have to talk a little bit about voter ID, your stance on that, and as well as For the People Act.
Right. Well, just a few weeks ago, we announced our Q2 fundraising. We raised over $860,000. We've just been so blessed and so fortunate that all the hard work I've been doing over the first half year is really paying off at this juncture. And I'm honored to do the job. I mean, this is an honor of my lifetime to serve.
So in terms of voter ID, what is your stance on this?
Well, I'm a big supporter of voter ID, and just last week we had a delegation from Texas that flew by private jet to D.C. to talk about some of the voter legislation happening in Texas. And I had an opportunity to question one of those Texas delegates on Texas voter ID, and that individual didn't have really any answers about voter ID in Texas. And in fact, I was able to point out in Texas that voter ID really isn't a problem. You need an ID to just live a normal life in Texas and anywhere else in the United States. And the encouraging thing that I learned and got out of that hearing that day is that blacks and whites, African Americans and Caucasians, that in Texas they all register to vote at the same percentage rate, and they all actually cast their ballot at the same percentage rate of their population. And so all those things are encouraging when we're accusing one side or the other of suppressing the vote or being racist when the data actually shows the opposite. I think it's really important that whenever we're making decisions, whether it's COVID-19 or about ensuring election integrity and election security, and that our ballots are counted and all that, that we're using facts and we're using good data.
Absolutely. H.R. 1, also known as For the People Act, what would its passage mean for future elections?
Well, H.R. 1 is really federalizing, it's usurping the Constitution of the United States because it's federalizing the election process. So today, the Constitution allows for states, each individual state, to outline when, where, and how their elections will be conducted. For hundreds of years, this has worked and continues to work. It also would fund with taxpayer dollars elections. So let's just say you love or you hate or like or dislike someone like on the squad like AOC, or maybe it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. Well, you would be funding the election campaigns of both of those individuals. And I just, two things. One, I'm not going to violate the Constitution, and two, we don't want to federalize it. But three, the federal government and tax dollars, you, the taxpayer, should not be funding somebody else's election, particularly if it's someone that you disagree with fundamentally or philosophically. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
All right. Well, and on top of all the committees and all the things that you've been doing thus far, you also take a huge caseload. You've been receiving phone call after phone call after phone call to your office, and we, of course, would be remiss if we didn't put that phone number up on the screen so that more phone calls can flood your office, Congresswoman. So
please do. Please do. I'm begging you.
Yes.
It's okay.
Absolutely. And so the reception from your constituents as well as the relationship to your office, so you're finding it to be a pretty solid one thus far.
Oh, absolutely. We're making historic records right now. We've already returned over $3 million to taxpayers in the district. A lot of people earlier this year continue to have problems with getting their IRS refund checks, so we're helping people through that process. It could be a Social Security check that went missing, or VA benefits, or you can't cash a stimulus check that you received, whatever that is, whatever that issue is. And often we get called about state level issues, and we help point people in the right direction. Even if it's not a federal agency, we still want to help them at the state level. We have opened over 2,300 cases, and we've closed almost 2,000 of those. And every day people are calling us, because one of the things I promised when I was elected is that I would work hard, and that no one would work harder than I would. And we're seeing that today. I've got to hire my 4th caseworker this week because of the load that we're having, and we're happy to do it. This is one of the honors of a lifetime. It is for me, is to serve, and I want to serve everybody in the Low Country, whether you have an R or a D by your name, it doesn't matter. Our job is to serve each and every person in our community.
I think this is a good place to end it, at least for now, Congresswoman. I have so much more to ask you, but we've run out of time. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're back after this.